Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the North Carolina Department of Information Technology and CostQuest Associates webinar today on Tier D&E license overview. We are getting started. We have a lot of content today, so what we will do is take questions in the chat. At the very end, I will allow you to unmute yourselves and to turn on your camera if you like, and then you can ask some direct one-on-one questions. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie Jane Edwards, who is over our broadband mapping for the Division of Broadband and Digital Equity. Stephanie Jane.
Thank you, Crystal. And I just wanted to welcome everybody as well and give you just a super quick introductory context about our North Carolina broadband programs that will make it very useful to pursue these no-cost fabric or address level data licenses through CostQuest. Many of you are familiar from our earlier webinars about the CAB program, the Connecting Available Broadband program that we are launching very, very soon. And so we're going to have a number of points along the way in that program that are going to be advantageous to have access to this fabric. I've posted some notes about this in the chat because we've had some technical difficulties with displaying this information for you. But you will be utilizing the broadband serviceable location fabric, which is licensed through CostQuest for some of the upfront protest process that takes place in the CAB program, which is ARPA funded, administered through U.S. Treasury. And then later on in 2024, we'll be conducting programs under the BEAD program funded by the NTIA, which will also utilize this licensed data. And that's not to worry, there's still time to obtain a license if you haven't gotten one already or you're unfamiliar with the process. That's why we're here today with Mark and Rochelle, who are going to walk you through the steps for getting a license to the broadband serviceable locations and explain a little bit about how those work. We have in the CAB program a little bit of a unique emphasis on county prioritization. So in our audience today, we have internet service providers who will obviously be utilizing the licensed data for an upfront protest process in the CAB program, as well as county leadership who will be crafting, giving input on county priorities, and helping to evaluate the program. And as we share the county prioritization projects of eligible areas, we'll be getting feedback on those from both internet service providers and counties. And with that, I will turn it over to Mark and Rochelle.
Hi, everyone. I will be presenting, so I will let Mark kind of introduce himself, and then he can send it my way.
Yeah, thanks, Rochelle. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm Mark Gutman. I am a Vice President at CostQuest Associates. As Stephanie Jane had indicated, we are the vendor for the FCC and NTIA to provide the fabric data for both processes. Those data licenses, as she indicated, are at no cost to participants in either one of those two programs. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Rochelle Fretz, who's going to walk through the Tier D&E process. So, Rochelle?
Hey, everyone. My name's Rochelle. I work out of our Seattle office, and I'm our government affairs manager. So like Mark said, I'll be walking us through the licensing process for the NTIA license for Tier D and E. These licenses are for participating in the challenge process through a bulk file-based challenge, or if you're seeking an award from a federal broadband granting agency, you will need either of these fabric licenses through NTIA. Next slide. So first of all, who is eligible? So you will need a license to the fabric data to participate in a bulk challenge process, or if you are a recipient, subrecipient, or prospective awardee of federal funds from a federal broadband granting agency, which I'm going to call FBGAs for just the lack of or expedition of time, because I will twist my tongue if I keep saying that. So FBGAs include, for example, USDA, Treasury, and Commerce. An FBGA is a federal entity that awards federal funds for broadband expansion. The key word here is federal funds. Some folks apply for these for state-funded programs. The licenses are only applicable for federal funded programs. Under both licenses, you will receive the NTIA fabric file. The fabric file is a CSV file that includes the unique location ID for each broadband serviceable location, the latitude, longitude for each location, and information about the structure, for example, whether it's a CAI or residential. The Tier D license is available for recipients, subrecipients, or prospective awardees of federal broadband funds from an FBGA. This license is for those that are looking to build networks, so ISPs or counties, and those that would also like to participate in the challenge process. So Tier D covers planning and the challenge process, while as Tier E is really designated for entities that are looking just to submit challenges. So those folks are usually units of local government, nonprofits, or an entity that has received a Tier 4 license for the BDC program. That would be under the FCC licenses. If you have an FCC license for BDC purposes, you cannot use those for network planning. That you would need the NTIA license Tier D. You do not need to apply for both. As I said, Tier D covers challenges and planning. Tier E is just challenges. Next slide.
And before you move on, Rochelle, if you could go back to that slide, and I just want to clarify for our North Carolina audience that largely our local governments and counties are going to be applying for Tier E. And I neglected to mention this earlier, but we do have ways of working with you. You are still eligible to participate in our U.S. Treasury funded program. If you haven't obtained a license yet, we have some ways of working with you on some aggregated data sets and that sort of thing. But we're mostly going to have internet service providers in North Carolina wanting to pursue those Tier D licenses. We don't have a lot of broadband infrastructure being built by local governments. And so for today's discussion, it's probably most relevant to focus on those Tier E licenses for our county and local government. Sorry about that.
And Rochelle, if I can also cut you off, we have one question in the chat where the question is coming up about the differences between the FCC Tier 2 and 4 data versus the BEAD data. So the data themselves, or the data itself is identical. What the differences are like Rochelle indicated, the licensing. The FCC licensing is closed into the FCC BDC process because the way that the Broadband Data Act was written is it's a set of processes that are just rooted in the FCC BDC system. NTIA is a different set of processes under a different set of laws. So there's two different licenses. The data are the same. What I would, one of the issues there is the FCC data is coming out sooner than the NTIA data is. So for example, what I mean by that is we will ship around the 31st of this month, FCC version 4. Currently, the states and all of the licensees on the NTIA side are on version 2, and they will be advancing into version 3 shortly. So what you have to watch between those two is the differences in the age of the data sets. And you can always tell that apart because there's an FCC underscore REL, FCC underscore release column in the data. And that will tell you what version of the FCC data, the root version of the FCC data that you're working from. So I hope that answers your question. And Rochelle, I'll turn it back to you on that.
Great.
It does. Oh, sorry.
No,
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
mute myself in just a minute, but from what Mark's saying, it occurs to me to back up maybe even one step further, because I'm realizing we probably have some people joining today who were not in earlier information sessions. And just for everybody's benefit, the broadband serviceable locations are just very similar to dots on a map, one dot per address, except each dot represents a structure or a building that could, should, or would become a subscriber to broadband service. And so that's the information that is like location-based information here that CostQuest has taken a great amount of time and effort to put together, and is being access to that data is being licensed through these different licenses for specific purposes, because this is normally a commercial resource, but there have been kind of bulk and group agreements reached to leverage this data for the purpose of broadband development.
Great. Thanks for that, team. We can, Crystal, if you don't mind, move into the next slide. So the Tier D license, these licenses are available with our contract with NTIA, provides the fabric data, which Stephanie just kind of reviewed, is that locational data set. So it can be used in terms of a network builder looking to analyze other federal broadband grant opportunities to decide if they would like to pursue an award for a given area. The Tier D license can also be used for challenges, and it can also be used for determining if an enforceable commitment exists at a location. So it can help determine if broadband has been deployed or is going to be deployed to a location based off of other funding sources from another FBGA. The Tier D license also supports reporting obligations falling under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act 60105. Next slide. So this looks like a lot, but hopefully it is a helpful resource when these slides get sent out. There will be another slide similar to this, I think, kind of towards the end, but it's more for your benefit post the presentation, but we'll walk through this. So the application process is a 4-step process, and it's done through a CostQuest website. So that's a kind of common misconception. People think it should be on the ntia.gov. It's a CostQuest website. The URL for the Tier D application is posted on the last slide of this presentation. And then before applying, we recommend having these 4 items ready. And you'll also need these same items if applying for the Tier E as well. So first, you'll need your FCC registration number. It's also called your FRN. An FRN is a 10-digit unique identifying number that's assigned to entities that are doing business with the FCC. Companies can have multiple FRNs, but you will only need to give one of them. And that 1.1 has a link that is the FCC's website that will walk you through step by step on how to obtain that if you do not already have that. The second item that we'll need to know is who will be administering the license, their name, title, and email address information, and then a public website that describes your organization. Then lastly, we'll ask you which counties you are requesting, and if you are a prospective or current awardee in the counties you are requesting, and under the program that you are looking to seek the license under. So this is where we see most of the applications get hung up in the process. So before applying, we recommend having an understanding of which counties you will be requesting, your program status, and your award status, which would be prospective or current. So you can apply for a certain county under as a current awardee, and then say you're looking to apply for BEAD funds, then you would be a prospective awardee looking at different counties. Next slide. The Tier E license, it's for the challenge process and to support the challenge process. Most of the folks that we see applying for the Tier E license are units of local governments, nonprofits, and then FCC Tier 4 licensees. Not to say that units of local government can't apply for the Tier D. This is just normally who we see under the Tier E. Next slide. This we just looked over on the Tier D license. The main difference is that if you are a nonprofit, we will ask for information substantiating your nonprofit status. So this could be a federal employment identification number or a letter from an authority designating you as a nonprofit. And next slide. This is one of the slides I was mentioning that's a little more useful post once this is sent out, as you can like zoom in on this flow chart. But it outlines the licensing process for both Tier D and E. So the first two diamonds on those left-hand side are for entities that are prospective or current awardees of federal funds seeking the Tier D license. So that first kind of set is just like questions to ask yourself to help you identify which one you would fall under. Then once you've identified which license you would like to apply for, you will go in, fill out the license request form, which is where it will ask you for your FRN, organization information, status, and counties that you're looking for, and or looking to participate in the challenge process. And then you'll identify the counties that you're interested or currently working in. Then a person on our licensing team will review the request and approve the license, or we may reach out if there's further clarifications needed. Most folks are approved. I say like 3 to 5 business days. It's usually less than that. Upon approval, they will then send an email inviting you to come into our help desk, supply your license information to receive the license. For Tier E, it's the same process, except there are fewer questions. You will just need to identify the counties you're interested in, provide the information to substantiate your nonprofit status, and identify the counties you are requesting. You can also request the full state. Again, the Tier E license is only for those seeking to participate in just the challenge process. Some other helpful notes on perspective. You can go, Crystal, to the next slide. Some other helpful notes on like prospective or awarded. If you have received funds, then you would apply as awarded. But under, say you have those treasury funds, you would apply for those counties as an awarded status. But if you're looking to then apply for BEAD funding, for example, you could select similar or other counties as prospective. So that's a good differentiator, is you can apply and Mark, let me know, hop in if I'm kind of explaining this incorrectly, but you can apply as both as long as it's under different programs, because your awardee status can be different under different programs. So folks kind of get caught up on that. So as we've been rolling out the licensing process, we've noticed some other common errors that applicants have made. So first, when applicants identify the same county as being both prospective and awarded under the same federal program. So that's kind of the key. You can request the same county, but you could be as an awardee under one and prospective under another. So this will then require manual outreach from our team to clarify your status. So again, if you're applying for two separate programs, you could have different statuses, but you can't have two separate statuses if it's the same program. We have seen requests for counties or programs that are not yet available, or applicants identifying a program but not adding any counties to their request. Both of those scenarios will require outreach from our team. If you are applying for the not yet available option is the only application portion for challenges. That's the only time you'll see the not yet available option. And that's most commonly seen when trying to challenge state funded programs. And then lastly, applicants have applied that are ineligible organizations. So that's a common error, is an entity that is not seeking to become a recipient of federal funds. For example, an engineering design firm or consulting organization are not eligible for a tier D or E license. They can get that data through their client as an authorized user, but are not directly eligible for the license. So if you're working with engineering firm, network planner, they cannot go in and request the license on your behalf. You have to go in as the ISP or county because you are the end user for the license. I think I missed the bullet number 2, requesting the whole state as awarded. That is a common misconception that we'll see is folks will come in and they'll just say, we want the whole state and our status is awarded. That will probably just require some outreach from us on clarification. And then Mark, do you mind going over the other program for IIJA?
Yeah, let me just catch up real fast. There's a couple of chat questions in here that I just want to address really quickly. And I think I'll go from the bottom up in the chat. Whoa. Okay, Stephanie, that's a long response there. Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
That one threw me there. Chris, on Comporium, I will send you an email separately. I see it being approved. My guess is there's a second email that goes out looking for the names to insert for the licenses. That doesn't look like it's been responded to. So I'll send you an email. I've got your email in the system. So I'll send you a response after this webinar, and I think we can take care of it pretty quickly today. Stephanie Jane, thank you for responding to the challenge process related to CAM project planning. And I think there was one other one. Oh, the question about the regional councils of government. The definition that's used in the BEAD NOFO is a local unit of government, and we understand that to be an entity that is a instrumentality of the state, or I think it's an instrumentality of the state, or an organization that is created by other governmental organizations. So if the regional councils of government in North Carolina, and I just don't know, qualify under either of those, they would qualify for the license, or they could also qualify if they're a nonprofit organization as well. So I may do a little bit of research with Stephanie Jane and make sure that we're on the same page with that. It's a pretty intricate definition. And then Rochelle, back on the IIJA front, that was the other piece that we wanted to talk about here. The licenses themselves are also applicable for entities that have already received prior awards and have a reporting obligation under the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, as Rochelle had indicated. So if there's a couple sort of corner cases that pop up here. If an organization has received money from another federal program that we don't have listed in our list, but you will have a reporting obligation, and you'll hear about that from whoever the entity is who's administering the grant. The Tier D would also suffice for that purpose. But one of the things that we would notice on the review of the licensing application is if somebody is requesting an entire state under an unnamed federal program or an unnamed other program for IIJA. So just if you are an organization that has that type of an award, we would expect it to be a pretty small area rather than the whole state. And if we see that, the worst thing that will happen is you'll probably get a reach out from our communications desk just to ask for clarification on what that request really means. And then once we understand it, we'll approve it or modify the request as needed. So let me just skip back. Rochelle, if you wanted to knock out the last one.
I've already ran through these bullet points. I think you were just looking at the chat. And so I think we're good to go to the next slide unless there's any other questions or clarifications on this slide. Great. So this is kind of some helpful resources. There's links to application guides and pages. The last row on this table is our help desk email. So if you feel you are getting stuck in the licensing process, you can reach out to our team. The row above is an FAQ page, so please read through our FAQs before applying to ensure that you have a smooth application process. And that is the end of my presentation.